Hey, hello everyone. This is Naveen here. Welcome to another video on this MongoDB administration series. Today I'm going to talk about CRUD operations in MongoDB. CRUD is nothing but create, read, update, and delete. So if you are coming from a relational database background, so you would be aware of something called DML, DDL and all, which we use. So here in MongoDB, we have something called CRUD. Okay. In this video, specifically, we are going to cover mostly on the read, or you can think of read as a select operation in MongoDB collection. So let's see it in action. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, since I am from a SQL background, I have a data set in my SQL server. Okay, so whatever I'm going to do in SQL server, we are going to try to convert that to a MongoDB query, like how we can pull similar data in MongoDB. Okay, so this is my SQL server and this is my data set. I have a table name called employee and it has about 50 rows. Okay, in Mongo also I have like same data, maybe like few columns are missing, but the number of row count is same. Okay, this is my Mongo instance, which is on the extreme right on the right side of the screen. Let's go ahead and connect to the Mongo. So I have Mongo version 6. Okay, let's see what uh, databases I have, and let me switch my DB to test DB. Okay, this is where I have everything. Okay, now let me type show collections. Okay, so this is the collection we are going to use. Okay, uh, employee. So on SQL, I have a same table, like employee is my table on SQL, and in Mongo, again, like I can do show tables also. Let me do that. It gives. Okay, so in Mongo we just say it collection. Okay, I just want to tell you, like, it is the same object name which we are going to reference. Okay, to start with. Okay, right now I have a very basic select statement on my SQL server where I'm doing a select star from my employee table. Now if I have to do a similar operation in MongoDB, what I have to do is db.employee.find. So you can think like this is my collection name and find is like reading. So I'm going to select the data from this collection. So if I do enter, it is returning about like 20 records in a single go, and I can type it for getting more records on my screen. Okay, by default we are not going to get the entire data set. It's going to limit what is sent to the screen, and if we need more output, we can uh, pull that data. Okay, now if I just go back, like I have, like as I said, I have similar data set. Here also I have 50 rows and here also it is 50 rows. Just to show you, you can see I'll be having, let me go to the top. So it starts with business entity ID 1. Okay, and if I go all the way to the bottom, it's there up to 50. Okay, so I have like same data set. Now we know, like, for doing a select star, what is the equivalent query in Mongo. Okay, so I can just do db.employee.find and do it like this. This is going to return all the data. Okay, now let's add a condition in SQL. Maybe let's say I want to search based on business entity ID, where, let's say for example, where ID is equal to 1, and now it returned this row. Basically we are doing a search for a specific value. Okay, now let's see how we can do this in MongoDB. Okay, so what you can do is, like, this command is going to remain same whatever we have, employee dot find. In MongoDB you have something called, again, condition and projection. Okay, so whatever, maybe I'll just pick this here and let me put it here. So employee is my table name or collection name. Find is like we are saying to a select. In Mongo, when we are doing a filter or select, so what you can do is the default statement whatever we ran earlier, that is going to give us all the records what without any condition or anything. Okay, now I am going to introduce two more uh, parameters, you can say. Okay, one, the first place is like where we will be defining the condition. Okay, and the second portion is projection. Okay, projection is nothing but what data you are going to pull. For example, whether it is going to be a select star or select few set of columns which you want to pull in your statement. Okay, for this example, like where we are pulling all the columns but whereas just the business entity id, we will be just using the condition. So now what I can do is, in here, we are going to filter based on business entity id. Now what I can do is just come here and copy the entity id, and I can say where business entity id is 1. That's all. Now we know how to filter based on some condition in MongoDB. So now I got the same output returned here, and you can see the business entity id and national id number, etc. Okay, so this is how you filter data in MongoDB collection. Okay, now let's take this a little bit further. Okay, as I said, we can pull specific set of columns what we want. I mean, let's say instead of select star, I wanted only few set of columns in my output. Instead of star, maybe I'll go with hire date, for example, and we have something called vacation hours in this data set and sick leave hours. Okay, just for the sake of this demo. Okay, I'm just getting in some random column names which I know it is there on this table. Now if I run this, I'm going to get only these set of columns in my output. Now let's see how we can achieve the same in MongoDB. Okay, so what I told you is, like, the first portion is for condition and the second portion is for projection. Okay, what you are going to project as an output. By default, if you don't give anything, it's like a star. Okay, like what we saw here, it is pulling all the data. But let's see, now I want hire date. Maybe let me select that and let me copy it here. Similarly, so I'm not going to finish it, I'm just for now, the sake of listing the columns, I'm just copying it. Vacation, let me put it here, and sick leave hours. Now what you have to do is, these are the columns I want to include. Okay, so you have to set, okay, set this to true. Okay, so you're telling MongoDB, okay, so give me this set of columns. So one is nothing but you're just telling you need it or not. Okay, now if I run, I'm going to get only this set of columns in my output. Okay, so I'll not be getting all other columns which are there, so I'm just pulling only the required column. Okay, now that you know how to select, how to add a filter, how to select a specific set of columns, now in MongoDB we have something called exclusion options as well. Let's say I want to exclude these set of columns. Okay, if I give 1, it's like setting it to true. Okay, give me only this set of columns. Now if I want to exclude those set of columns, whatever is mentioned in my query, all I have to do is just set that value to 0, which means it's like setting it to false. I don't want those columns in my output. So you can see you will not be having hire rate, vacation hours or sick leave. So that is how you can decide what columns you need and what you don't want. So one thing I want to mention here is like you cannot have a mixture of selection set to true and false. Maybe like if I run this, it's going to give an error saying cannot do inclusion of field sick leave hours in exclusion projection. So you cannot have a mixture of this. Either you define what you need or you tell what you don't want. You cannot have a mixture of both. Okay, so now you know like how to filter, how to specify what columns is needed, and if you want to exclude some columns also you can do it. Now let's take this to the next level. Okay, now let's say you want to know how many records are there in my collection or in my table. In SQL or T-SQL you can just do a count star, right? So I can do a count star from employee and I can run this query. I have 50 rows. If I want to do a similar thing here, so what I can do is, let me just remove this instead of typing all. If I run this also, just for your information, if I just run with this without having any condition and any projection, it's like doing a select star. Okay, it's just like I have kept the condition and projection as default, so there is nothing defined. Now what I can do is I can just do a count here, and that's how you do a count of a given collection. Let's say if you are working on any production systems where you might be having a bigger collection and you want to know how big or how many rows it has, so you can go for a count on that collection to see how many documents we have. Okay, now we know how to count the table. Okay, let's see how to pull a top 2. In SQL we can do something like this, right? Let me just go back here. Let's say it's like top 2, and let's say I want to pull all the data. Now what I can do is if I run this, it's going to pull the first 2 records. Okay, let's see how we can do a similar thing in Mongo. So here we have one more function called limit. Okay, so limit, if I run, let's say if I do limit 2, it's going to give me the top 2 documents in my collection. You will be seeing a similar output what we got in SQL Server. So I see the business entity ID is 1 and 2, which is same here. So we can use the limit function to sort, or I mean pull only the first 2 data or first 3, like how we have top in SQL. Now what you can do is, this is to pull this top. Now what we can additionally add is like we can maybe sort this output. Okay, now we know I'm pulling the top 2 records. Let's say if you want what are the recent documents in my collection. Okay, so what you can do is you can sort that output so that you will get the recent data. So in my case I'm going to order by maybe business ID itself, entity ID, and before going for like on what order, I mean on what basis we are sorting, I'll just go with the default in SQL. Okay, let me do the same thing here. So I'm limiting top 2. Okay, and then I also want to sort. We have a sort function, and I just have to define on what column name I'm going to filter. So in our case it's going to be the business ID and I'm going to sort it. So I'll be still getting the same output, which is like business entity ID 1 and 2, because this sort statement, if you see, okay, let me just go through this. So initially you have defined find, okay, and I have not put any condition or projection here, which means we are selecting all. Then I'm limiting it to 2, which is like top 2 in my T-SQL, and then I'm doing a sort, which is order by in my SQL, and on business entity ID. Similarly, I'm enabling a sort on business entity ID. By default, when you do order by in SQL, it's going to go with ascending. So if you want to go with descending, you have to explicitly mention. Now I get 50 and 49. Similarly, in Mongo, if you want to do it like that, so all you can do is just add -1. Now you will be seeing, so this is my command. So if I want to sort it in descending order, so I'll just add a -1. Now I have business entity ID 50 and 49 returned here. Okay. So now we know how to sort, how to pull top records. So with this, like if I know on what column my values are increasing in my document, I can sort based on that and get the recent records. So in fact, I can also sort on underscore ID. If you have that in your collection, I can sort based on that as well to get what is the recent document which was inserted. Okay, so if I do this with underscore ID also, I'm still getting 50 and 49, business entity ID 50 and 49. Okay, so now let's look at other things, like what all things we do in SQL, right? So next what I can think of is maybe we can see how to search for a specific string or a value. Okay, though we covered the condition, whatever we have defined here is like kind of doing a search, but let's see few more examples in that. Let's say if I want to do a select star from employee, and for example, I know there is a job title column, and what you can do is we will see based on designation maybe. So whoever is in design, whoever is having design in their designation, we are going to job in their job title, we are going to pull that data. So this has returned about 8 rows. Okay, now this is a wildcard search, whatever we have done. Okay, and SQL is not case sensitive, whereas Mongo is case sensitive. Now let's see like how I can do a similar thing in the Mongo. Okay, so before going for this design thing, okay, let me maybe show you few more examples, and maybe we'll again come to this design thing. Okay, anyways, let me switch to the Mongo thing, and we'll see how to do a search on a job title. So this one is like a condition, okay, which means it will be coming in the first set. Okay, so let me just type this and job title. I have taken this, and what I can do is, if I, let's say I have, maybe before going to this, let me show you the output. Okay, so maybe we'll pick vice president. Okay, so I want to list the list of business entity ID whose job title has a letter V. Okay, so what I can do is, now I'll come back here, and this is how I'll be doing a search. Okay, if I do like this is going to return all the people who is having business job title as, which contains a letter V in their job title. So it should be capital V, since Mongo is uppercase, case sensitive. It just given me the two output. Maybe I don't think there is any other uh, job title in this list with other letters. Okay, maybe we'll search for production control manager where M is in uppercase. Now if I go back and change this to M, okay, looks like we have whole bunch. Yeah, marketing is there, so that's why we see all these output. So that is how, like, you can search for a specific word. Okay, like as it is case sensitive, so we have to I mean, be careful like on what criteria we are going to search. Now let's go back. Now if I want to see, let me see what example I can take. Okay, so now I told it is case sensitive, right? For example, if I go with T, let's see capital T, how many output I'm getting. Okay, still like we are getting many. I just want to show you. Okay, fine, whatever, that's fine. So what we can do is, you can change the search criteria to case insensitive as well. Okay, so if I just add an I here, this will be treated as case insensitive, which means what will happen is, so vice president is having a lowercase of t. Now if I run this, I will be seeing vice president also in my output ideally. Let's see whether I'm getting it. Yeah, so maybe the first output also, chief executive office, it is having a t lowercase, which is also written. Okay, so with this I can say, okay, search for, go for case insensitive, so that it is not case sensitive. So with this I can search for a specific word or something and pull the data. Now moving on to the actual query which we are supposed to run, where we have to pull job title with design. Okay, let me type, let's run this, and we know how to do a count, right? Let's not go and review all the data. I know in SQL it returned 8 records, and similarly in Mongo we have like 8 documents which was written. When I do a count, I get 8. Okay, now we have operators, right? Like let's say if I want to search greater than or lesser than or greater than or equal to, something like that. So let's see how that can be done. Let's first see the SQL output, and then we will see how same query can be written in Mongo. Okay, so which column we can pick is for this? Maybe we'll go with vacation hours. Maybe I'll pick vacation hours is maybe greater than 85. I just want to keep the output a little bit less. Okay, this written just 2 records. Okay, now we will see how this can be written in Mongo. Let's remove all these things. I'll just start it from here so that it will be easy for you to follow. So I've just kept condition and the projection. Now we are going to search based on vacation, right? Vacation hours. So we have this column here. I'll bring it here in the condition. Now we have a separate object which we are going to pull in here, called GT, which is greater than operator, and I'm going to search for 85, which is this. Now what I'm saying is, do a select, and I haven't defined any projection where vacation greater than 85 is defined here. So first I have given the column name on which I'm going to filter, and within that I have added one more bracket and defined the greater than object and 85. Now let's run this. Now I got again like 2 records with business entity ID 1 and 49, which is matching with what we got in our T-SQL. So now similarly, if I want to run it with lesser than, let's say I want lesser than, maybe I'll go with 5. Let's see how many records this is returning. Okay, it's returning 4, right? In Mongo, like what I can do is I just have to change this operator instead of greater than, lesser than, and we'll go with 5. Now let's see how much this is returning. It should be same. So we have like 4 documents which are written: business entity ID 2, 3, 14, and 15, and it is the same what we got with our T-SQL as well. So that is how you can do greater than or lesser than operations. We could also do like this. So in SQL, let's say if you want to include 5 also. Now I'm including 5 also. If I go to the um, vacation hours, I have like 5 records. So in Mongo, how you can do is like less than or equal to LTE, greater than or equal to would be GTE, something like that. Okay, now if I run this, maybe I will add a count again instead of we going through the entire data set output. So now I got like 5 records, which means vacation hours with 5 is also included in my output. Okay, next, so whatever the conditions we are searching, right? So in SQL, let's say if you want to search based on multiple values, like we have something called where in, right? In clause. So if I want to do something like that, let's see how to do it. For example, I'll take where business entity ID in maybe 2 comma 3. Okay, and this is obviously going to return 2 records. We'll see how you can search for a given column with multiple values with in condition. Okay, let me just go with this, and maybe I'll remove all these things again. I will just keep this here and like this. Okay, now we are going to filter based on business entity ID, so I'll just copy that and bring it here. Now what we have to do is like it is based on multiple values. Okay, so whenever, so again I'm going to define another object here. I'm going to call in where in operator here. Now what you have to do is you have to call an array. So basically array is something where you can pass in multiple values and do a search. Now if I run, so it's going to give me the business entity. You can see the query now. Maybe if it is, maybe I'll try to copy it here, if this is going to give you a better visibility. Now you can see business entity ID is, this is one set. Okay, this is where we are defining the condition. Now what I have done, it is based on business entity ID, and I have defined a flower bracket here, and within that I am defining the in condition, and within square bracket I am defining my array, where in SQL like how we have defined it here. So we are defining it here and got similar output with business entity ID 2 and 3. Okay, now we know how to use in. Okay, let's move on to the and condition. Okay, for that maybe I'll again pick vacation hours, maybe where vacation hours is greater than 45, and let's say I want to also filter based on sick leave hours. Okay, maybe I'll pull this down. Let's say I will go with sick leave hours as 65. Let's run this and see how many records it returns. Okay, good. We got only 2 records. Now let's see how to get this output in Mongo. Whatever T-SQL we have written, let us see how that can be achieved in Mongo. Find, and let me just define this. So and condition is pretty much, I would say it's like straightforward, where you will be defining the 2 conditions and we'll be getting it. Okay. Now let's pick the vacation hours. Vacation hours, I'll just pick it, and what I'm going to do is within this I'm going to pick my greater than symbol. So it is GT, and I'll be saying where greater than 45. Now this is done. Okay, first part is done. Now I can put a comma, and so now I'm going to call the second condition, which is my sick leave hour. Now what I can do is I will again call the condition on what I'm going to say. Again here I'm going to pull greater than, which is 65. Okay, now this is also done, and if let's run this, you will be seeing business entity ID 1 and 4. Maybe I'll copy this also to management studio. Okay, so db.employee find, so these are the conditions which we gave. Okay, so in T-SQL it is vacation hours is greater than 45 and sick leave hours is greater than 65. Similarly, we have defined the conditions here and got the output. So this is how you can define AND conditions. So AND is like both should be satisfied and it will return the output. Okay, now moving on, let's see how to use OR condition, where if any one condition satisfies, it's going to return the output. Okay, so for OR, maybe I'll pick some higher values. Okay, so that again, like this will avoid the data which is returning, it will be less and it will be easy for us to see. Let us see what this is coming. Okay, we want to go with OR, right? Let me go with this. Okay, good. Again, like it is the same data set, but that's fine. um, Maybe let's see what is there. Sick leave, right? mm, let's pick this as 60 maybe, so that we get few more records. So I have 7 records. Okay, now let's see how this can be done in Mongo. I will again remove this. It's okay, we can type this again so that you can follow it. I have removed all the conditions, and projection also we are not defining it anything. So in OR, what we have to do is basically this comes as a separate object. I'll be defining OR condition here, and like as I said, whenever we are defining more than one condition, it will be like an array. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set an array, and within this I'm going to define my conditions like this. Okay, before I write, let me copy this so that it will be easy for you to understand what I mean. So I'm saying or condition. Okay, so this portion is where I have to define my condition. Now since I'm going to use or condition, I'm using an array, so I call the or operator and I'm declaring an array here, and within this brackets I'm going to define my conditions, which will be vacation hours here, and I'm going to again say this will be greater than 90. Okay, and sick leave hours is greater than 60, which I will be defining in this condition like this, greater than 60. Okay, so that's all. It's let's try running this. I'll copy it and put it. Maybe let's do a count on top of this, 7 records, and it is matching with what we saw here. Okay, so that is how you can use or condition. Okay, now you know how to use and, how to use or, how to do a wildcard search, how to search for a specific string, and how to use in and all those things. Okay, now let's try to make use of all the commands, right? So that let's see, it will be fun. I will do like select top 2, and I will say, let's say if I want to maybe wait, I think let me comment this out so that okay, select star from employee. I don't want to pull all the records, I want to pull top, and again I don't want all the columns. I want business entity ID, then login ID, and maybe I'll take hire date, okay, for this example. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to also have a where condition. Vacation hours is greater than 45, and maybe I'll pick sick leave hours also. Since I know this data set, I'm just going with this values. So I'm adding a filter, and then I'm also order by the hire date. Okay, maybe let's run this command and see like what output we are getting. Okay, so I got business entity ID 4 and entity ID 1. So this is the output we got. Let's see how to write this command in Mongo. Now I'll say db dot employee find, and let me define this here. Okay, now we are going to say I'm going to limit what I'm returning, right? So let me add limit. Okay, this is going to limit the data. Now I want to define what values are going to be added in my projection. Let's come here and define that. Business entity ID include, then login ID also I want to include, then hire date is something which I wanted. Let me add that. So right now we have done with this part. Okay, now what we have to do is let me see if I can move this little bit. Okay, this looks better. Okay, now let's move on to the where condition, and I also want to sort the output. Maybe we'll add sort also. I want to sort based on hire date, right? Okay, let's do the sort as well. It's going to be hire date. Let's get that. And so I'm going to go with the default sort, which means I can go with 1. Okay, so with this the output would be sorted. Now the only pending is the condition. Let's go and define the condition. So it is vacation hours is greater than 45, and what condition I have apart from this, let me close this. Now I'll define the next condition, which is my sick leave hours is greater than 65, and let's close this. Let's run this command. Okay, there is an error. Okay, there is an extra comma. Let's try to get that. Okay, we'll go one by one maybe. Okay, this is my condition. Okay, and okay, I think I got it. Okay, this is my condition. This is for this condition. Let's run this. Okay, now it is the same output what we got in SQL, and that's the same thing what we have it here. Okay, and I think that's it. I had it for this video. So if you want to know how this data was moved from SQL to Mongo, please do let me know in the comment section. It is very easy, and I can tell you how to do it. Okay, and that's all guys. Maybe in upcoming videos we'll talk more about updates, insert, deletes and all. Okay, and yeah, thank you.